Hello, friends. Happy Saturday and welcome back to Elaborations with Skellington Grin. I'm Ava, your Gothic Witch Big Sis, and this is our first bonus episode of October and our little Saturday bonus dose of tarot magic. If you tuned into Monday's episode, we explored a little bit of Tarot 101 that allowed us to see the tarot as a little map of the soul. But today I want to zoom into one of my favorite threads of that map, which is the Fool's Journey. Essentially, the Fool's Journey does span over the entire tarot deck, but the main story is told by the 22 Major Arcana cards, and it is a story that we are all living, whether we realize it or not. So, I invite you to grab your favorite autumn beverage, light yourself a candle, get a journal, and let's take a stroll together. So, what is the Fool's Journey? The Major Arcana is the set of 22 cards numbered 1 through 21 in Roman numerals, and then we have the 0 card, which is the Fool. And the Major Arcana starts with the Fool and ends with the World, which is pretty much that symbolism of coming full circle on your journey. But these aren't just random pictures. They are the archetypes and building blocks of the human experience. And the Fool's Journey is basically that epic of your soul. You are the fool, not naive, not stupid, not dumb, but curious, maybe a little innocent, and wide-eyed and ready to leap into the unknown. You're ready to go into that next chapter. And if you recall example that I gave on Monday, I gave the example of thinking about Bilbo Baggins in The Hobbit yelling, "I'm going on an adventure," with no clue how many trolls, dragons, or riddles in the dark are coming. That is the Fool's energy. And until they really go through the rest of their journey, they're not really going to give that much of a hoot about what's coming up, even if they know that it's going to be a perilous adventure. They're just kind of like, you know what? I'm going to face some peril. I'm going to learn some lessons, but it's going to be good for character building. Let's talk about the early cards, because the first stretch of the journey introduces us to the Fool meeting different guides and energies. The first card is the Magician, which teaches us manifestation and lets us know that we already have the tools to manifest everything that it is that we want in life. We already have the tools needed to understand where our journey is going to take us and where we want it to take us. Card number 2 is the High Priestess, which teaches us that inner knowing and invites us to go inward and listen a little bit deeper. It teaches us that our intuition is the most strong tool, or the strongest tool, I should say, for better grammar. The High Priestess teaches us that our intuition is the strongest tool that we have in our toolkit. The Empress brings forth abundance, creativity, and the lushness of life. The Empress is our third card. And the Empress is typically depicted as a pregnant mother who is bringing forth that nurturing and that motherly energy, and can also speak about fertility. But I do want to caution many of you, because you're going to look at that and say, oh my God, wait, fertility? What do you mean? Fertility in the sense of the Empress does not always mean actual pregnancy or anything like that. Fertility can also mean being able to be abundant with creative energy, and knowing that when you put your creative energy into something, you're birthing something that you want to produce. I know it's kind of weird to be using those terms, but think of it like planting seeds. When you plant a seed in a garden and you water it and you nurture it and you take care of it and you give it the right amount of sunlight versus water versus darkness versus energy, you'll be able to watch that seed grow into a plant, whether it's your favorite flower or a rose bush, or even being able to grow homegrown tomatoes and other vegetables. It is having that fertile soil and having those tools to be able to create what it is that you want to create. Okay? The next card up is, of course, going to be the Emperor, who grounds us in structure and authority and is pretty much that balance of the masculine side of the Empress. The Emperor comes in as this nurturing kind of father figure and a little bit of that pragmatist, okay? The Hierophant connects us to tradition, spiritual teachers, or systems. Whether that is you connecting to your religious traditions or you connecting to anything that might be a part of your culture, or even finding a system for yourself and choosing this chosen system for yourself. The Hierophant connects us to the Lovers card, which is often seen as the overarching card for love readings. But the Lovers card also cracks us up and cracks us open to choice, connections, and relationships, whether they are business relationships, romantic relationships, or even platonic relationships. The Lovers doesn't always show up in a reading to talk about actual romance. Sometimes the Lovers just signifies choice. And if you are especially doing a reading on yourself and you are a single person, then the Lovers might simply mean falling back in love with yourself and making the choice to prioritize yourself. Okay? The Chariot reminds us that willpower and direction can carry us far. And with this early stage, it's all about learning who we are and how we show up in the world in those first 7 cards. The middle cards is where the journey really gets real. Strength says that your power isn't in brute force, but compassion. And oftentimes when we see the Strength card in a tarot deck, it is the image of a woman or even sometimes a man, depending on the deck, and they are sitting next to a lion who sometimes has a hurt paw. And they are tending to that. They are caring, they are nurturing, they are recognizing that it does not take brute force and that the lion isn't always going to be a symbol of brute force and bravery. Sometimes the bravery is in allowing yourself to be taken care of when you're hurt and still showing resilience even in the face of adversity. The Hermit pulls us inward. So this is going to be another inward card, but the Hermit asks us to look inside of ourselves for the answers, because sometimes the answers are not going to be in the external world. The Wheel of Fortune, or the Wheel of the Year, reminds us that life is always changing and cycles are always spinning. Justice brings forward truth and accountability and balance. The Hanged One, or the Hanged Man, asks us to surrender and to see life from a new perspective. And the Hanged Man is often going to be depicted as being a person hanging upside down by their foot. And when you are able to view life from the upside down perspective, you have a different worldview of everything. Because when you're right side up, you sometimes can't see the forest for the trees. And the Hanged Man is my favorite card to talk about pauses in life. The Hanged Man is a card of surrender, surrendering to the circumstances, surrendering to new perspectives, surrendering to adaptations and changes. The next card is Death. And it is one of the cards that most people hate to see in a reading, but death brings forth life, and death transforms us. What no longer serves us must end so something new can be born. And death is a card that speaks more about rebirth than it does about endings, because in any cycle of life, something has to end, something has to change in order for something new to take place. Let me just give you a practical example. Say you are a family person and you are planning to expand your family. Maybe you don't have children, or maybe you do have children. And you know that you are preparing for another person in your family to enter into the world. And you're realizing the house that you're in might be a little too small for a family. So what do? You start looking at new homes, you start planning and budgeting, and you start making a plan to sell your current home and move into something that's a little bit bigger, something that you can grow into and expand into as you grow your family. So you have to give up the old house to be able to move into the new family home, right? So death doesn't always have to be something scary, but it does talk about transformation. And transformation and adaptation can sometimes be very challenging, but it doesn't have to be scary. Temperance is the next card up that teaches us harmony, patience, and integration. And this entire middle section is the part of the journey where the main character realizes, oh, this is not going to be easy because growth is going to require sacrifice. But that is a lesson that is so rewarding no matter what stage of life that you are in. Now, moving on to the final cards, because here is the big test. The Devil is the next card up, and this is another card that a lot of people don't like to see, but it shows us our change, our addictions, our attachments, and our fears. It shows us where we could be tempted to fall back on old patterns when we get too comfortable in life. For example, say one of the habits that you're trying to break in order to be more financially responsible is impulse spending. Maybe one of your coping mechanisms for dealing with stress has been impulse spending, and you'll spend a lot of money on takeout through DoorDash or Uber Eats, or you'll spend a lot of money online on things that you want, but they're not necessarily things that you need. And the Devil is going to be that card that talks about that temptation to fall back on that coping habit when we get stressed. And when we see the Devil come up in the reading, we are being asked to look at those patterns that are keeping us stuck, those attachments that are maybe good in theory because they're giving us a little bit of placating, but they're not really actually helping us move forward, right? The Tower is the next card that a lot of people don't like to see. And I am mentioning that people don't like to see certain cards because they can be very transformative and very blunt. But the Tower is the thing that shakes it all down and destroys false foundations. So I like to present the tarot card of the Tower kind of being like, even if you have a good foundation, sometimes you need to destroy what's built up around it and build new support beams, kind of like building a new home. But the Tower is going to show you where you might need to really change what's going on around you. And it's going to shake you up because it's supposed to show you where things really aren't working and you're going to have to surrender to the collapse. The Star follows the Tower and arrives with hope and healing for the changes that you are making. The Moon is going to bring about mystery, illusions, and the shadow work that you might need to do. The Sun is going to shine with joy, clarity, and celebration. Judgment is going to call us to awaken and step into our higher purpose. And finally, the World speaks of completion, integration, and wholeness. The Fool has journeyed through every stage of becoming and arrives back at unity. And then, when the cycle starts over, the Fool steps off the cliff again because growth is never a one and done deal. Now, I know that was a little bit of a quick way of describing the Major Arcana. So if you want a little bit more of a deep dive, we are going to be offering a little bit of a PDF for a deep dive, and you can grab that in the show notes. But why should you care about the Fool's journey? Because it is your story. And it is the universal story of falling, fumbling, growing, breaking, healing, and becoming. And when you pull a Major Arcana card, whether it is in a reading for yourself, a reading for a client, or you're getting a reading done for yourself, and you're going to a tarot reader, and they're pulling a Major Arcana card, you're not just pulling cardboard and ink. You're tapping into thousands of years of human myth and spiritual truth. So if you do have a tarot deck and you are wanting to start reading tarot, and it is something that has really sparked an interest for you. Here is a practical practice that you can try this week. Pull out that deck and separate the major arcana from the rest. And if you have a newer deck that has not been shuffled before, it is probably going to be easier to separate the major arcana from the minor arcana. Go ahead and separate the cards and just shuffle those 22 cards. Then once you feel like you have shuffled the energy, pull one card and ask yourself, where am I in my fool's journey right now? Journal whatever comes up. You might be dealing with the death of letting something go. You might be dealing with the lovers and being asked to make a choice. You might be in the sun, finally basking in joy. Wherever you are, go ahead and honor it. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of diving a little bit more into the major arcana, because that was the Fool's Journey, a myth of the soul lived through 22 archetypes repeated over and over as we grow and evolve. And if this episode spoke to you, come by and say hi on Instagram and let me know what card you pulled as your place in your journey. You can also find links in the show notes to book a reading with me or to snag the free tarot cheat sheet that I made for beginners who are walking on their own path. And if you would like a little bit of a deeper dive, I am also going to be offering a workbook soon, and you can grab that in the show notes as well. Until next time, may you trust your leaps, honor your journey, and remember, being the fool is exactly where the magic begins. This has been another enlightening episode of Elaborations with Skellington Grin, and until next time, I hope you have a very fantastic weekend. I'll see you again soon. Bye!